I didn't want to do it at first, and they'd been after me to do one for about 2 years. And I thought, well, you know, there's going to be 22,000 people there, so we can throw in some new songs maybe and everything. But as it turned out, we didn't. We played all old songs, and they just sort of stared at us. And it was a strange experience, really. It was about 6 months ago.
The shock after the crash when Ricky Nelson died in a tragic plane crash on December 31st, 1985. The world was heartbroken. Many believed the once famous teen idol had lost everything. News reports at the time claimed he was deep in debt. His divorce had cost him over $1 million, and it was rumored that he owed money to multiple people, including music industry insiders. His financial troubles were so serious that people thought his children would be left with nothing. But unpaid bills, Ricky's image had been built on fame, success, and charm, but behind the scenes, he was struggling to stay afloat for years. His career had declined, and so had his income, just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse. A surprising discovery changed everything. Ricky's brother, David Nelson, found a will that had been written just months before the crash. This document proved that Ricky had made plans for his estate and had chosen to leave everything to his 4 children. That alone was a twist. But what came next was even more shocking. Lawyers digging through Ricky's old contracts found that record labels had been underpaying him. For decades, they were keeping money from his music sales, especially from new digital platforms like streaming. It turned out that Ricky's music was still earning millions, money his family had never seen. Once this came to light, a series of lawsuits followed, leading to settlements so big that even judges were stunned. What had started as a story about loss turned into one of unexpected wealth. Ricky Nelson, once believed to be broke, had left behind a hidden fortune that would soon make his children millionaires. A childhood in the spotlight. Ricky Nelson's journey to fame began when he was just a child. Born on May 8, 1940, in Teaneck, New Jersey, he wasn't part of an ordinary family. His father, Ozzie Nelson, was a successful band leader, and his mother, Harriet, was a well-known actress. From the start, Ricky was surrounded by cameras, scripts, and music. He wasn't raised in a quiet neighborhood. He grew up in studios and on sets. His family's radio show, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, was already popular across the country. Eventually, the show moved from radio to television, and young Ricky became a regular cast member alongside his brother, David. Most kids his age were riding bikes or playing baseball. Ricky was learning lines and performing in front of cameras. Their Los Angeles home even became the family's TV home, and fans would drive by to get a look. It was a strange mix of real life and fiction, where every moment could be turned into an episode. Even family vacations sometimes became part of the show. Ricky didn't have a normal childhood. He had no time for school friends or regular birthday parties. His parents were strict and ran the family like a business. Everything, including personal moments, became content for the show. This constant exposure made Ricky famous, but it also made him feel trapped. He was always in the spotlight and never really got to just be a kid. That early fame would later influence many of his choices, both good and bad. As he grew older, the rise of a teenage star, Ricky's fame exploded when he was a teenager. In 1957, at the age of 17, he performed the song I'm Walkin' on his family's TV show. The reaction was immediate and intense. Girls screamed, records sold out, and suddenly Ricky was a music star. The single sold over 1 million copies, and his performance on television helped launch his career as a teenage idol. His father, Ozzie, had been smart about promoting him by placing the song at the end of each show. Ozzie made sure Ricky reached millions of viewers every week. This gave Ricky a level of exposure that few young musicians had at the time. His debut album, Ricky, was straight to #1 on the Billboard charts. He was now both a television star and a chart-topping singer. But behind the fame, Ricky was changing. He started to rebel against the perfect image his parents wanted. He began dating co-stars and going to parties. His father still tried to control him by limiting his money and managing his career. Even though Ricky was making thousands of dollars, he was only allowed a small weekly allowance. His parents hoped this would keep him grounded, but it only made Ricky want more freedom. He started pushing back, growing sideburns, wearing flashy clothes, and taking risks. His private life was very different from the clean-cut image shown on TV. Ricky's charm and talent were real, but so was his desire to break away from his parents' control. This mix of more than 10 million viewers tuning in each week. This exposure gave Ricky an unbeatable platform. Record labels couldn't compete with the kind of attention Ricky got every week just by singing in his living room on national television. His songs like I'm Walking, A Teenager's Romance, and later Poor Little Fool became huge hits. In fact, Poor Little Fool made history in 1958 by becoming the very first song ever to hit #1 on Billboard's newly created Hot 100 chart. Ironically, Ricky didn't even want to release that song, but radio stations picked it up and made it a smash. His father kept him away from shows like The Ed Sullivan Show because he didn't want Ricky sharing the spotlight. Every move was carefully planned. It was working. Ricky Nelson had become one of the biggest stars in both television and music. But no one realized that while all this money was coming in, a large part of it was disappearing. Ricky was being robbed, not by his family, but by the very companies that were supposed to pay him fairly. For years, royalty checks were either missing, unreported, or mishandled. Ricky trusted the system, but the system betrayed him. After Ricky's death, his estate was believed to be drowning in debt. He had just come off a failed comeback tour. His divorce from Kristen Harmon had cost him millions, and many believed there was nothing left for his children. But that hidden will changed everything. It allowed new legal teams to take a second look at his contracts, royalties, and years of mismanaged finances. What they found was shocking. Labels had been keeping royalties that belonged to Ricky. Other companies owed him for music usage, television licensing, and more. The legal team moved quickly, and soon a series of lawsuits and negotiations began. The settlements were enormous. The judge in one of the cases was reportedly stunned at the size of the figures. In the end, Ricky's estate won millions of dollars. That money went to his children, Tracy, Gunnar, Matthew, and Sam. The family, once believed to be left with nothing, suddenly had enough to secure their future. For fans, it was a bittersweet victory. Ricky had been cheated in life, but finally honored in death. His music legacy, once tangled in legal issues, was now being returned to where it belonged, his family. But even within that moment of financial relief, the Nelson family faced another heartbreak. While Ricky's estate was divided among his four children, one son, Sam Nelson, received nothing. The decision shocked fans and family members alike. How could the youngest child be left out of such a fortune? The answer wasn't simple. Legal documents and custody issues from Ricky's relationship with his ex-partner complicated the inheritance. At the time of Ricky's death, Sam was still a minor, and there were concerns about guardianship and estate management. Some reports suggest that Sam's mother and the estate executor had conflicts over who would control the money. Others say the will had limitations that excluded Sam unintentionally. Whatever the reason, the outcome was painful. Sam, who was just a child when he lost his father, not only had to grow up without Ricky, but also without the financial support the others received. It's one of the saddest parts of Ricky Nelson's story that even after his death, the effects of mismanagement and broken relationships continued to cause harm. It's a reminder that fame, no matter how bright, doesn't protect a family from pain or loss. In the end, Ricky Nelson's life reads like a song, beautiful, emotional, filled with highs and lows, and ending with an unexpected twist. He was a boy born into fame, who became a teen idol, then a rock and roll star. He was controlled by his parents, adored by fans, and later forgotten by the industry he helped build. He tried to make a comeback, but died before he could rewrite the ending of his story. Yet through a hidden will, a long legal battle, and the determination of his family, Ricky's true value was finally recognized. His children, most of them, inherited more than just money. They inherited a name, a legacy, and a piece of American music history. But the story isn't just about fortune. It's about how complicated families can be, how fame can blur what's real, and how sometimes the truth takes years to surface. Ricky Nelson left behind more than riches. He left behind a story, one that still moves hearts today. Ricky Nelson left behind a fortune so big, it made his family filthy rich. Have a look. Ricky Nelson was more than just a famous name. He was a symbol of the golden age of American entertainment. Born into a showbiz family, he started his career as a child on the popular television show The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. Alongside his parents and brother, millions of viewers watched Ricky grow up on screen. But as he got older, Ricky did something very few child stars could do. He became a music icon. His smooth voice, good looks, and charm made him a favorite among teens across the country. One of his early singles topped the Billboard Hot 100, and that success wasn't just a one-time thing. He had a string of hits that crossed into country and R&B charts as well. Ricky's music career exploded, and his songs continued to earn money even decades later. Even today, his estate still collects royalties from those songs. No matter how many covers are made, no one can take away Ricky's title as the first artist to ever reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 between 1957 and 1962. Ricky placed 20 songs in the top 40, a massive achievement for such a young performer. Only Elvis Presley had more hits during that time. One of Ricky's first big songs with Imperial Records was Bebop Baby, which sold over 1 million copies. What was even more shocking was that it had $750,000 in pre-orders before it was even released. That was a huge deal back then, but Ricky wasn't just lucky, he had business smarts too. His contract with the label gave him full creative control over his music and album artwork, and he was guaranteed $50,000 over 5 years. That was unheard of for someone his age. Ricky had become more than just a teen idol, he was a brand, and that brand was making a lot of money. By 1960, his international fan club had over 9,000 chapters around the world. He wasn't just popular in America, he was a global star. That level of fame helped build the fortune he would one day leave behind. Ricky didn't stop with music. In 1959, he entered the world of film by starring in the Western movie Rio Bravo. With legends like John Wayne and Dean Martin, his role as Colorado Ryan was praised, and he even received a Golden Globe nomination for Most Promising Newcomer. But with fame came temptation. Ricky began living the high life. He wore expensive clothes, drove luxury cars, and spent time in exclusive clubs with Hollywood's elite. Reports say he had a monthly allowance of $5,000, which would be about $50,000 today. Fame gave him freedom, but it also changed him. He was no longer the clean-cut boy next door. Ricky became a man who enjoyed the finer things in life, even if they came at a high cost. Yet, through all of this, he stayed committed to his music. In 1961, he took a chance on a song that had been turned down by another singer, Sam Cooke. The song was Travelin' Man, and it quickly shot to #1. It sold over 1 million copies in just a few weeks. The B-side of the record, Hello Mary Lou, also became a hit, making that single a double success. But Ricky was facing problems behind the scenes. The older studio musicians didn't take rock and roll seriously. Some refused to play the music the way Ricky wanted. One even said, "Kid, this ain't music." Ricky had had enough. He fired the older musicians and hired young players who believed in his sound. One of them was James Burton, who would later become a legend himself. Building this new band cost Ricky a lot. He paid for their equipment, travel, and salaries, but it gave him the control he needed. He wasn't just making music anymore. He was making a statement. He refused to be treated like a puppet. He wanted respect, and he was willing to fight for it. Ricky's choices weren't always easy, but they helped shape the music that would earn him and his family millions in the years to come. He was investing not just in his image, but in a lasting legacy that would keep paying off long after he was gone. Then came 1964, and everything changed. That year, the Beatles came to America and appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. It was a moment that changed the music industry forever. In just a few weeks, the Beatles held the top 5 spots on the Billboard charts. Elvis Presley struggled to keep up, and so did Ricky. His single For You barely made it into the top 40. The British invasion had arrived, and the old rules no longer applied. Ricky wasn't the center of the music world anymore. The new generation of fans wanted something different. Ricky, once a leader in rock and roll, now found himself left behind. The fame that had once been effortless was now slipping away. He tried to adjust, but the market was shifting too quickly. The spotlight began to dim, and for the first time, Ricky's future in the music industry seemed uncertain. While his career was facing challenges, Ricky's personal life was also going through major changes. On Christmas Day in 1961, he met 16-year-old Kristen Harmon. Ricky was 21. Kristen was the daughter of football star Tom Harmon and actress Elias Knox, her brother. Mark Harmon would later become a big TV star. On the surface, Ricky and Kristen were the perfect couple, young, beautiful, and famous. But their relationship came with a lot of pressure. Ricky's father still had control over his finances, and Kristen came from a wealthy background where spending was a way of life. Ricky tried to keep up, but the money was going out faster than it came in. The couple bought expensive homes, luxury cars, and took exotic vacations. The bills added up, and Ricky's fortune began to disappear. What had started as a love story turned into a financial mess. Ricky, who had once been one of the richest young stars in America, was now struggling to stay afloat. Their wedding took place on April 20th, 1963. But it wasn't exactly a dream come true. Kristen was pregnant, and her Catholic parents insisted on a fast ceremony. Ricky wasn't Catholic, but he had to sign a promise to raise their children in the Catholic faith. He even had to attend religious classes. What should have been a happy time became stressful and filled with pressure. Oddly enough, Ricky's parents were thrilled about the marriage. They had rejected every other girl he dated, but Kristen had the right image, classy, famous, and from a respected family. It seemed perfect on the outside, but inside the home, things were falling apart. Kristen didn't know how to budget, and Ricky was still trying to manage the demands of his career. As his fame declined, their spending didn't. Kristen wanted him home, but he had to tour to keep earning. The pressure on Ricky grew heavier, and their once glamorous marriage ended in a painful $1 million legal battle. Even after they were married, Kristen joined Ricky on the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, playing herself. With both of them working, one might expect their money problems to improve. But instead, they got worse. The paychecks meant more spending, not more saving. They were surrounded by agents, lawyers, and business managers, but no one helped them manage their finances wisely. Ricky kept touring and releasing music, but the income wasn't enough to match their lifestyle. Fame had made them rich, but it hadn't taught them how to handle money. And yet, even with all this struggle, Ricky's earlier success had created something powerful, something that would help his family for decades to come. When Ricky Nelson died tragically in a plane crash on December 31st, 1985, the world was shocked. He was only 45 years old. Fans mourned the loss of a music legend, but in the years after his death, something remarkable happened. The music he had recorded, the TV shows he had appeared in, and the films he had starred in continued to generate income. His estate began to grow. Royalties from songs like Poor Little Fool, Traveling Man, and Hello Mary Lou kept pouring in. Reruns of the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet brought in even more money. Merchandise sales and licensing deals added to the pot. Ricky may have struggled with money during his life, but in death, he became a financial powerhouse. The fortune he left behind helped support his children and preserve the Nelson name in Hollywood history. His estate, built on decades of hard work and talent, became one of the most valuable in the entertainment world. Ricky Nelson's legacy wasn't just about music, it was about wealth, fame, and a family fortune that continues to grow even today. Ricky Nelson's hidden fortune, the untold story of fame, loss, and a family's shocking inheritance. Ricky Nelson was once the heartthrob of America. In the 1950s and 60s, his face was everywhere on television screens, record covers, and teenage bedroom walls. As the star of the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, Ricky was more than just an actor. He was a symbol of clean-cut, all-American charm. But while millions adored him on TV, behind the scenes, Ricky was walking into a storm. Fame had come young and fast, and with it came the pressure to always stay on top. His father, Ozzie Nelson, had strict financial rules that kept the family stable for years. But as Ricky grew older and more independent, he drifted from those rules. He wanted more freedom creatively and financially, but it came at a heavy cost. Surrounded by managers, assistants, and accountants, no one could stop the slow bleeding of his money, and the bleeding wasn't just financial. Ricky's personal life was quietly falling apart as well. By the mid-1960s, Ricky's marriage to Kristen Harmon, an actress and painter, was becoming more strained by the day. They had once been seen as the perfect young Hollywood couple, but behind closed doors, things were not so picture perfect. In 1965, they starred together in a film called Love and Kisses, directed by Ricky's father. On screen, it was a comedy about two young lovers. Off screen, it was a cry for help. The film tried to bring back Ricky's boyish charm. He played a teenager even though he was 5. But audiences and critics noticed something was off. Kristen's performance was stiff, and Ricky seemed disconnected. The couple's real problems were showing through the roles they played. The lighthearted film had a dark undertone that nobody talked about. It was awkward and painful, and looking back, it almost felt like a warning of the disaster ahead. The marriage was crumbling, and both Ricky and Kristen were too deep in the Hollywood machine to stop it.